welcome everybody to this second module, second part of the Ever After 2016 class. This part is all about developing your own style, about style development, and I think this is just such an interesting and exciting topic to explore, and definitely I think a part of this class that you will really get a lot out of, because I think for everybody who creates something, at a certain point you feel that inner need to kind of create something that is more you, to kind of find your own style. And I hear that so often. How can I find my own style? How important is it to have an own style? So I think this will be like super interesting to explore. So let me just start real quick. My name is Andrea Gomoll. I'm a mixed media artist from Berlin, Germany. And yeah, Tam gave us some really good, really investigative questions, which I totally love. And I can't wait to answer those questions for you and to kind of explore those style development topics with you and for you. And I totally hope you will get a lot out of this, a lot that you can, information that you kind of can pull out of this and use it to kind of explore your own style and to develop your own style even further. So let's start with the first question, which is, as an artist, what does an own style mean to you, and how important do you think an own recognizable style is? For me, as an artist, to have an own style is, yeah, very important, I think, because your style is your message, okay? At a certain point, when we create something, we definitely want people to recognize our work as ours, because we put so much of ourselves into our work, starting from a certain point. You know, in the beginning we start to learn and we start to practice, but at a certain point we put a lot of ourselves, of our own feelings, of our own experiences into our artwork. And I think from this point onwards, as an artist, you also want others to kind of see and recognize your own style, and to look at your work and say that's work by XYZ. I think that's a point every artist kind of strives for and wants to reach at a certain point, because again, you put so much of yourself into this and you want others to see it and to recognize it as something unique, right? Not like mainstream, she's just doing something that everybody does, but you want people to, yeah, recognize those small things that only you can kind of add to your work, right? Because there's so many things in art that have been done for centuries, that have been done over and over again in a very similar way. So you kind of put your own little twist into your work, and of course for you as an artist it is important that others see this little part of you that you kind of add to your work. So yeah, I think striving for your own unique style is, yeah, something important as an artist. So the next question is, what do you think are recognizable elements in your art, elements that kind of make your personal style? First of all, I think it is really hard. I learned that in the past and I heard that over and over again. It's really hard to talk about your own style. It is much easier to recognize a certain style, certain stylistic elements with other people, or with the art of other people, and sometimes it's really hard say or to really tell, to really put the finger on what is your personal style, not only in art but also like in fashion or in general, like your personality, your personal style, what makes you you, what makes you unique, right? And to be honest, it took me quite a while to really realize that I even have developed an own style, to be honest, because we will talk about that later. It's kind of, you're working in stages, you're working, practicing, learning, and then you're repeating, and during this repetition and during this process you kind of develop your own style, no matter if you try or not. It kind of happens automatically, but most people don't even realize that. And ever so often I hear that I don't have an own style because people do similar things to what other people did or other people do, right? But yet, if you kind of put your heart into your work and if you let your personality kind of shine through, then you definitely already have an own style or are on the way to develop your own style. And again, also for me, it kind of came, or it happened step by step without me, in the beginning, without me even realizing that I'm kind of forming my own style just by doing things the way I wanted them to do and by putting my heart and my imagination and my spirit into my work. So developing your own style really is a process, definitely. And for me, at a certain point I realized that I'm kind of moving into a direction of having my own style. First of all, by discovering elements and stylistic things that I kind of repeated over and over again, like repetition in my work. When I looked at my work, I realized that there were elements that kind of repeated again and again and again, and those in the end, or a combination of all those maybe sometimes very tiny elements, that's kind of in the end what makes your work unique and what kind of builds and forms your style. It's like a sum of many different small tiny things sometimes, and that's why sometimes it's hard to realize that. First of all, most of my work is very bright, shiny, colorful, playful, whimsical, quirky, and I think that's just my personality shining through, because I definitely am like a deep person. Do you say that in English? I hope so. But I'm also very playful, very quirky, very, how do you say, very enthusiastic, and I kind of kept the child inside alive. And I think that kind of reflects or is reflected in my work. So I think that's a major style element, if you want to call it like that. That my work is really this playful, maybe childlike type of thing, childlike illustrations with very funky, very bright colors. So it's actually the opposite to realistic drawing or painting. And I tried to work in a muted color palette, but I just didn't feel it. You know, I can do it, but it doesn't feel like me. And I think that's a way to find your own style. If it feels good what you do, and if it feels like you, then you're definitely on the right path. And if what you're doing doesn't feel right, if it just feels like you're doing it because you are trying to push into a certain direction, but it doesn't really resonate with you, then you definitely should think twice if you're on the right path to developing your own style. Because in the end, style is a sum of stylistic elements that people can see in your work, but for me it is also your personality, or the personality of a person shining through the artwork and the person behind the artwork. So it is not just one thing, style, you have it, you don't have it, but it's a sum of many different components to have your style and to realize what your style is. Of course, there are elements again, that kind of repeat in my work to kind of get back to that focus of the question. I definitely love to use big-eyed girls as a main focal point, as a main element in my work. That's just so me, and that's kind of those big-eyed girls were kind of the starting point for me, the reason why I started to paint and to draw, why I wanted to learn it, because I just loved it so much. So those big-eyed girls, they definitely are like a repeating element in my work. Of course I do other pieces of work, but I kind of always get back to my girls. And then there are smaller elements, smaller things that repeat all through my work, and so you could call them stylistic elements. Like I totally love to use this doodly, sketchy outlining with a black pen. For me, it just doesn't feel, a project doesn't feel finished if I haven't done any black outlining with some doodles, sketchy, loose lines. I just love that look. So this kind of adds to my personal style. I love to use cross-hatching. I know there are many people, especially like pencil artists out there, who use cross-hatching. It's a common stylistic element, so it's not reinventing the wheel. But again, I have added this to my style palette to kind of form and build my style. And I'm using the cross-hatching, even though I don't have to use it, because usually or normally cross-hatching is a way of shading things, shading elements. That's why it's basically used in like pencil work. If you don't work with different colors, then you kind of have to find another way to create value, to create like shadows, midtones, highlights. And that's what cross-hatching actually is used for. But I kind of added on top of my colored work, and it kind of just adds a whimsical, playful touch. I love that look, so I think that's another stylistic element of my work. Then I love to work with lots and lots of layers, with lots of texture. I guess that's because I haven't started out as with drawing and painting, but I'm coming from a mixed media background. Where I've been working with lots of different media, with fabric, with layers and layers and layers of texture paste, of color, of different elements, collage work. So I kind of brought those two things together, this mixed media art journaling part and the painting and the drawing. So my work kind of always includes many different layers. I guess that's why my lessons are so long all the time. Lots of layering, lots of texture. I just love it if you like have the finished piece in your hand and you can really feel something, you can feel the different layers. You just want to touch the piece of work to really experience that piece, not only look at it but also feel it. I think that's another stylistic element of my work. I love to use paint splatters kind of as a finishing touch to my work, and I don't know when this started. It just happened and I love that look, and I kept on adding it. Actually, I've been using paint splatters on my scrapbook layouts years ago, and I just loved that look back then already. So I added this to my work, and it's kind of transformed into one little piece of my style. And it's kind of a running gag, because whenever I create something on Periscope where people join me live while I'm creating, and I'm about to finish my work, and people kind of, they can chat, if you know Periscope, and they kind of tell me that the splatters are still missing, because they call me the queen of splatters, just because I always use black or white or both paint splatters as a finishing touch on my work, just because I love that look. It's not because I decided I need to form a style. It is because it is just so me. It adds those cute little whimsical touches, and yeah, that's another part, or that turned into another part of my style. Yeah, and I think that's it in the end. A combination of all of those different artistic, stylistic elements, plus having your personal or your personality shining through your work. I think that's what kind of makes my style and what makes everybody's style. So the next question is much of your personal story kind of reflected in your work? How do we find, or where do we find you in your work? And I think I already touched that up in the previous answer. A lot of my personality can be found in my art, because again, it kind of reflects my inner child, my playfulness, my quirkiness. So that's definitely one thing. And the basic style, the basic energy that I kind of add to my pieces, and that's definitely so me. And I just work in my favorite color palettes, for example. I mentioned that before. I try to work in other color palettes. It just doesn't feel right. So whatever I do in my work actually is my inside put onto paper. So like my favorite colors, my favorite themes, topics, things I'm interested in. And ever so often my work, actually most of the time my work kind of reflects my personal interests at that time when I created that piece of work. Because I try to kind of integrate things that are meaningful to me into my work. Let's say I had a phase where I've added lots of pets, cats, dogs, animals to my work, kind of going along with my girls. That's why in the back of my head, I wanted to create something, and I had an idea in mind to kind of support our local animal shelter with this, because that's one thing that's close to my heart, that's important to me, and I wanted to donate something to the animal shelter. So the dogs, the cats, they kind of made their way into my work, and I turned it into an online class. So it kind of all, or most of the time, it's kind of a reflection of what's going on in my life as well. Let's say I love like stones, healing crystals. That's one thing I'm totally interested in for a long time, but lately that really turned into an addiction. And yeah, those crystals made their way into my work. I started a series of crystal girls, like an amethyst girl and a clear quartz girl. So you actually find a lot of me, a lot of my personal background, a lot of things that really are important for me in my work, definitely. And that's important for me because, let's say right now I'm like super interested in like stones and crystals. I just feel the urgent need to kind of integrate that interest, that thing that's important to me into my work. If you like scroll through my Instagram feed, you can actually see how my interests changed. It all kind of summed up, and it all kind of made me create something and kind of stay true to my passion and my style. But you can definitely see changes in my work, which are always kind of reflecting where I was or where I am at that point in time when I created that piece of work. So I think that's an interesting thing, and for me, I definitely need that personal connection to my work when I create. There might be like a period where I totally feel like painting girls. There might be a period where I feel like doing sketches, everyday sketches in my sketchbook. There might be a period where I love to just create with watercolor, to create watercolor backgrounds, patterns, to create watercolor flowers, floral things. And I kind of always follow that feeling inside of me. Let's say right now I'm totally interested in one thing, then it would feel totally wrong and I wouldn't find the passion to create something different. Like another example, I totally love oracle cards. I have a huge collection of different oracle decks. So it only came or felt natural for me to kind of combine those two passions, to create my own personal oracle and affirmation card deck just for me, just because it makes me happy. And I create a lot of work that I don't even share online, or that I only share little parts of online, because not everything that I create is meant to go public. And sometimes it's not even like matching my the designer in me would say my corporate identity, so like the picture that people have from you. But still I create things just because they make me happy, not with the intention to put them out, to share them with the world, but because it's important for me to create those projects, like those oracle cards, for example. I might turn them into something one day, but right now they're just for me, and just because it totally makes me happy to create little pieces of art for those oracle cards, and because it is another thing that's important for me, that I have interest in. So I think that's also essential to continue to enjoy and to continue to find your own way in art, that you never lose this personal connection with your art, that you always listen to yourself. What do you want with your art? Where you want to go with your art? And always listen to if it still makes you happy, if you're on the right way. So the next question is, what are you trying to communicate with your work? What story are you trying to tell? And actually I already touched that up in the previous answer again. Actually, the only story I try to tell with my work is my story, my personal story. Because I think our own story is the only story we can really tell. I hope that makes sense. And of course, my intention is that people who look at my work, or the students that I teach to create, that they pull some positive energy out of looking at my work and out of learning from me. So basically, if people look at my work and they can connect to me and to the feeling that I try to evoke with my art, then my mission is kind of accomplished. Because again, there is no super deep meaning in most of my pieces, but it has meaning for me because it tells part of my story. I share a piece of me, a piece of my heart, a piece of what's important to me at that point in life with my art. And if that reaches other people, if that touches other people, if it just makes them happy, maybe even just looking at it and it makes them happy and makes them smile, then that's perfect. That's what I kind of want to achieve with my work, that people kind of get something out of it and just enjoy it, just enjoy looking at it. So, next question is, how did you develop your own style, and did it just happen naturally, or did you like focus on it? And I think developing your own style is a process. It kind of consists of different steps that everybody goes through. Okay, the first step is you have the intention to learn. You are starting at zero and you are learning something. You're doing this by learning from somebody, from a mentor, by taking classes, by reading books, by watching videos, whatever or whichever way you choose. But you just want to learn, okay? You don't plan too far ahead. Right now at that stage, you just want to learn to create something. And at that stage, you also copy your mentor, the people you learned from, and that's important. We will get to that point later. And then there is a second step where you kind of have reached a point where you can do it, okay? You want to learn and then you can do it. And then you continue to practice. Practice. And somewhere along that way, somewhere after that second step, while you practice and you play and you work and work and work, somewhere along that way, you automatically start to develop your own style. And many people, me included, at that point started to really think and feel the urgent need inside that you really want to create your own style. Up to that point, the only thing you wanted is to learn and to kind of perfectionize, to do this. But once you reach that point, once you're good at something, you want something more, and it only is natural that then this more means that you want to continue to grow with what you do, which also means that you want to make it more your own. Up to that point, you just want to learn it. Now you want to improve, you want to make it your own, you want to find your own style, and you kind of feel that you want people to recognize yours as yours. So actually in the beginning you're trying to, or your goal and your wish is that your work should look like XYZs. Okay, you have a person who's teaching you and you say, oh my God, I wish I could do this. I wish I could create something as beautiful as this. And that's what you strive for. But once you reach that point, once you can create something that is as good or close to as good as the person you learned from, then you evolve, and then you want to move further and you want to move away from that point, from that artwork that you create that looks similar or very similar, very close to XYZs, right? And I think no matter if you are an artist, a painter, if you are a writer, if you are a musician, you always reach that certain point where you want to stand out from the rest, where you want to create something more unique, something that is more you. I think that's just natural to humankind, that we want to stand out. We just want to be unique and we want to create something unique. We don't want to be or to create a copy on the long run, right? And that's the point where we kind of start to develop our own style. My personal style development journey, actually in the beginning it was the same with me. I just wanted to learn to paint and draw. Again, I'm coming from a mixed media and art journaling background. I did collage work for years, but there was always something missing because I didn't want to work with the same supplies like rubber stamps, stamped images, stencils, etc. over and over again, because this way I couldn't really add my personal touch, I couldn't really add my message, I couldn't bring my message across. So I really felt that urgent need to learn to draw and paint. And by that time, I promise, nobody believes me, that's 5 years ago, by that point all I could do was draw a stick figure. Seriously. I couldn't have painted and drawn if my life would have depended on it, because I just couldn't. And I wasn't even sure at that point if I could ever do it. But I felt such an urgent need to give it a try and to learn that, to be able to add more of myself to my work, more than any pre-designed rubber stamp or stencil could ever give me. And so, first step, I definitely wanted to learn. I just totally loved the art of the big eye girl or big eye art movement in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. One of the major persons or artists who kind of stood out from that period is Margaret Keane. You might all know her. She's kind of the godmother of the big eye girls. I know there have been artists before who have been painting big eye girls, but Margaret Keane is kind of really a very popular name for that big eye art movement. And I also adore the artwork of Os Franca and of Eden. I still remember I found an old calendar sheet on the flea market. I just love antique shopping on flea markets. And I found an old calendar sheet with an art print of Eden on there. And I just totally adored this style, this whimsical, non-realistic, surrealistic style of painting girls, of painting people with those big eyes. They kind of added so much meaning because the eye is like the mirror of the soul, and the eyes are usually what kind of draws you into a piece, into a photograph or into a piece of art. So I felt the urgent need. I definitely wanted to be able to do this. And I took online classes. I took live classes. I took online classes by many different artists actually. I took live portrait classes in Berlin at the public art school. And I bought piles and piles of books. I watched videos, again took online classes. So I took actually everything I could at that point and practiced. That might, I know this is as old as time, you know, practice, but it definitely is all a part of practice in the beginning, because you have to get from that point, I want to learn it, I want to be able to do it, to the point where you can basically do it. Okay, again, that's where the style development comes in. So that's my first that was my first step into the world of painting and drawing, and adding paintings and drawings to my art. And I think it is important. Just, I know I kind of always lose track with the questions and the answers. I'm so sorry, guys. Maybe I should call it one of my stylistic elements that I can't keep it short. And I think one thing that can really help you with your own style right away is to learn from many different sources and from many different teachers, because this way you kind of don't get stuck in one style right away, but you take inspiration from many and learn from many different sources and from many different teachers. So by doing this, you kind of to a certain point already develop your own style while you are learning, actually, because learning from many different teachers, you already kind of pre-select the direction you want to go into, and you already pre-select what things and what elements you like, you want to work with, and what elements you don't like so much and you don't want to incorporate into your work. So I think really learning from different sources, different teachers is a very good thing to do. And then, starting from this point on, when I felt that I have the basics down, I can basically draw a face, I can basically sketch a landscape scene. From that point on, I felt the urgent need to kind of find my own style and to make all of the things that I learned my own. So I kind of extracted things that I definitely want to include in my work, and I try to make them my own, try to tweak them, and try to separate from the basic things that I learned and then that have been like taught to me. And to be honest, for me it was easier, and I think my style really developed automatically and in a natural way, far more than when I really urgently tried to find my style. Because there was a time when I really tried very hard to make changes, make big changes, to really find my style, to really add elements, to really distract elements, to make it unique. But to be honest, take my advice, the harder you try, it's not working. You're gonna fail, because along the way you're only like focused on your style, and that you forget to really enjoy the process, and that you really forget to bring yourself into your work, because you're just so focused on style and focused on creating something unique and creating something that's totally different from what others do, right? So don't push it too hard, that's my advice. Don't try to focus too much on creating your style, but instead really have fun, play, and do what you love to do, and try to bring what you want to add to your work into your work in your personal style. And that's definitely helping. And it's a process. It's not like you, with a snip of a finger and suddenly you have your own style that's unique from everything else. It's not like that. It's not going to happen like that. It's a process and evolution. And I think I developed my style over the past 4 years, 4.5 years. Yet I wouldn't say I have my style, it's set in stone. It is still evolving. There are still changes that I make to my style. So it's really an ongoing process. And I think it's good that it's to look at it as an ongoing process and not as a thing you focus on and you want to bring into your work and you're working on, okay? Really embrace your art the way it is now and just continue to work and continue to put yourself into your work, and your style will come automatically. You will find your style and your unique niche. So next question, where do you find inspiration and how do you use it in your work without really copying something or somebody? To be honest, a big plus for me is that I'm a person who really can't follow any instructions, who can't really follow any rules. User manual, what's that? I never really use a manual. So that might help me, myself, automatically to not really copy something or somebody, because I just can't. I'm starting out maybe copying or painting from something. Let's say I take a seashell at the beach and I start out to copy this seashell, but somewhere along the way I can see myself run with it, and I don't know, in the end it turns into something completely different. So that's maybe one reason why I don't do realistic paintings and drawings, because probably I couldn't. I'm not sure if I could. I never actually really tried to stay 100% close to copying or to painting from real life, for example, just because it's not my style, it's not what I want. If I want a realistic copy of something, I take a picture. I'm a wedding photographer, right? So if I want a realistic picture, I take a picture. I just take a photograph and that's it. But when I paint, when I draw, I actually want that part, that artistic freedom, that in the end it turns into something completely different. And I just love it. That's happening naturally for me. Maybe that's helping me, that my art doesn't turn into a copy of something from real life, because I take or I draw a lot of inspiration from the world that's surrounding me. I draw a lot of inspiration from nature elements, from textures. I love like wooden textures, textures on leaves, textures in general. I love to do everyday sketches, to really sketch the world that's surrounding me, to sketch everyday scenes, everyday things, everyday items. But even with my sketches, which are kind of capturing an everyday thing or an everyday theme, they are not copies of the original scene. They are just kind of extracting the essentials of that, and kind of are my vision of it. Okay, there might be like a forest, which I really love, but I might just extract something from that and add that to my sketchbook. So nature really inspires me. Another thing that I totally love and that I find totally inspiring is to just flip through magazines and look at advertisings. For example, to find unique color combinations. Colors totally inspire me. I just love to find unique and fun and interesting color combinations in magazines, in books, in nature, wherever. And if I find a color combination that's kind of capturing my attention, that totally inspires me to sit down on my art table right away and create a piece of work, a piece of art in that color, using that color combination or inspired by that color combination. Again, natural elements like seashells, stones, leaves, flowers, all those things, they totally inspire me, and I just love, 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 love to draw inspiration from them and to incorporate them in one way or another into my artwork. And another good thing is that in nature there's no copyright. So you could even like copy that seashell 100% and no harm done, right? Yeah, one more thing that inspires me, that might sound a little materialistic, but new art supplies kind of always inspire me. So whenever I'm stuck in a creative rut or I have like a creative block, some new pens, new markers, new paints, they kind of always do the job and get me back on track. So yeah, different art supplies, new art supplies, and trying them out and playing with new supplies and new techniques kind of always inspires me.